Like-Minded by Sentient Stove. Read by My Lost and Found. Summary. When attacked by a villain on the way home, Aizawa Shouta gets stuck in Midoriya Izuku's head. Aizawa just wanted to take Midoriya home and then go to sleep for the weekend. Neither of those things happen. Midoriya is wondering who the heck is digging around in his head, and also why they're terrified of him. He's just 8 feet tall and speaks only through impressions while with the Vestiges, after all. It's not that scary. This fic is about 5,000 words in one chapter, and as always, link to the fic is in the description below. And on with the story. Hey, Aizawa-sensei. I know that this is supposed to be a punishment for the last time I got attacked while walking home to visit my mom, but thanks anyway, Midoriya said brightly, and Shouta just sighed as he kept their pace towards the buildings that Midoriya lived near. There'd been an uptick in security again after a few students had been targeted when they had been cleared to head home for the weekend, and thanks to that, they now needed a teacher escort, and Midoriya, being the largest villain magnet in the class, well, Shouta hadn't exactly trusted anyone beyond him and maybe a fully buff All Might to escort the student. Since All Might wasn't able to go to his transformed self anymore, the responsibility fell on Shouta. It was fine. He was going to stop by a cafe after literally handing the student into the hands of his capable mother. It'd be a nice break before heading back to UA to find the electricity had been blown out by Kaminari again. They turned onto the last street. It was empty, which felt a bit more odd than if it had been. It was a Friday night. Shouldn't a residential area be bustling with kids or people leaving for an event out? Shouta shifted from casually watching their tracks to on more alert as Midoriya bounced ahead, excited to get home. He really should have seen it coming. Midoriya tripped on a bit of concrete, and Shouta moved to grab him by the shoulder, not noticing the person that melted out of the shadows behind them. They didn't have a chance. Maybe they would have if they hadn't been distracted, if there'd been someone else out there to yell. As is, Shouta pulled Midoriya up. The student went to thank him, but instead crumpled down, accidentally dragging the other with him. Midoriya! Something hit him in the back of the head. Not anything solid. It felt more like a pulse of energy of some sort. Go figure they'd be attacked by a villain. Shota's brain jolted, almost as if it was switching tracks, or he'd used his quirk past its limits. He passed out. Got who you needed, the man said as he dropped the bodies on the floor in front of All for One, them thumping dully on the ground as he bowed mockingly. One hero and one hero student that shatters his bones like there's no tomorrow. All for One towed one of them. He was pretty sure it was the student, as he sent out a quick scan of both of them. Good. When will they wake up? He'd at least like to have Midoriya awake to hand over the quirk. Meanwhile, the doctor could start out immediately with whatever he'd originally planned for the hero ages ago. Fuck if I know. Maybe a half hour? The mercenary had a ton of impatience, and they moved, most likely holding out a hand for some money. I did my job. Got them in one hit, so I'd like to get my dues. The villain sighed and waved a hand. Kurogiri melted out of the shadow behind him to stand there, a silent force. There was a ripple of fear from the mercenary that was satisfying, before it was squashed. Get him his money, and drop him where he needs to go. I'll handle the delivery. All for One said dismissively, and Kurogiri moved, both disappearing off his quirk radar within moments. With that taken care of, he crouched down and probed carefully at both of them with leftover quirks. All Might's brat, just as sticky and impossible to grab, while Erasure curled lazily around his quirk, almost begging to be taken. With a tug, though, it didn't budge. Odd. He tugged again, harder this time, and the quirk recoiled away from his, sticking like how his brothers had, like how Midoriya's gifted one did, which was impossible. No other quirk was supposed to act like that. Eraser couldn't negate his own anymore, not after a quirk he'd taken after failing to capture the hero years ago. All for One placed a hand onto the hero's face, thumb tracing his forehead as he covered the eyes and tugged harder on the quirk, frowning when it still refused to budge. It wiggled a bit, but then it would stick back, fighting. All right, he'd either reached his quirk limit and could hold no more in the actual all-for-one quirk, or he was having technical errors for some other reason thanks to Erasure. All-for-One stood up, lifting the hero and Midoriya with him as he did, before he was turning and moving deeper into the warehouse, to the back rooms of their secondary location, where half a dozen backup Nomu were floating eerily in glass, green casting the walls. Not that he could see any of it, as he used an echolocation-based quirk to navigate where the doctor was, bent over a surgical table. "Doctor?" The sound of metal hitting the ground, pushing of equipment to the sides as the small man moved across the room, breathing and heart rate quickening. "You brought me him, and a second as well?" "He's broken. I can't get the cork out. And you can have Midoriya as well once I'm finished with him." Good. I have a table prepped for the first. Put him on. I want to do some testing before I get into the meat of it. We'll see what's wrong with his quirk while I'm at it." The doctor sounded far more excited than All for One had been expecting. But then again, the hero had managed to consistently slip from both of their grasps, constantly for nearly 15 years. He moved the still unconscious body onto the table. The doctor started to mumble and write as he moved it around, taking blood pressure and running some wand-like thing connected to a machine over the man's eyes and brain. Interesting. "What?" All for One demanded. "His brain waves are tangled. I'd show you the readings, but since your quirk doesn't show screens, it's not worth it. Let me pull up another table for the second. I want to scan his as well." A few minutes, and some unholy screeching later as a table was pulled out, his prize was on top of it, the doctor running the same kind of tests he did for the hero. Peculiar indeed. Same blood pressure, resting heart rate as Yotogi. "Who?" "The first," the doctor said dismissively. "I can assure you, when I'm done, he'll be as high-functioning as Kurogiri. He carries the same genome that most others don't have. However, I can't do anything currently." All for One pushed down a bubble of annoyance at the news, opting instead to lean over the hero. "And why is that?" "Their brain waves are entangled with each other. If I operate on one, it'll kill the second. If you try to take the Eraser quirk, the boy's own quirk will prevent you." "Fix it." "I can't. We have to wait for one to wake up, and you can't interfere with a quirk of your own without making them both brain dead." The doctor moved away, voice fading slightly. "I'll get them on supports." God, All for One should have probed the mercenary's quirk more. Izuku woke up, upside down. Well, up was down, really, since his hair wasn't hanging, nor did he feel like there was a blood rushing to his head. It could probably be explained to feeling like you were inherently standing the wrong way, and so he gently pushed from the ground and slowly rotated himself, eyes blinking to get used to the environment as he expanded. His mindscape. That made more sense. The way it seemed to go on forever, staticky and stones intermittently floating in the void of nothing. He himself was in his vestige form, and Izuku slowly moved forward, probing the area for the others as he concentrated. They were here. He could feel them, although there was something sharp and wrong at the edges of his mind, just existing, and so he wrapped it up until he couldn't feel it anymore, just a dull pulsing from that direction. Someone was here. Someone that didn't belong. And Izuku wanted them out of his head. It was all too familiar of when Shinzo had needled his quirk in for the first time. God, as cool as the boy's quirk was, he hated it so much when it dug under his skin. Their other classmates had said it felt like floating while watching someone carefully move you like a china doll. They were lucky enough not to be haunted. Izuku just got splitting headaches and broken fingers as the Vestiges jumped to protect him. He expanded a bit more, nervous lightning sparking at his edges as he stared off towards the pulsing. It'd taken a bit to get there, but hopefully he'd run across the others and they'd help. Man, he just wanted to wake up, preferably with his mind mostly empty. Shouta woke up in a bed. Something was wrong. There wasn't the familiar pressure of his partner. That made sense. They spent most of their time living apart due to work. But weirdly enough, his cat also wasn't there, and Washing Board was always trying to suffocate him awake, demanding to be fed. Something is off. He sat up, sheets pooling around his legs and waist. He was fully dressed in his hero gear. Another tick off his "shit's fucked" counter, and his capture weapon was neatly spooled on the edge of the bed. Shouta leaned forward and grabbed it, smooth material slipping through his fingers. It hadn't been this soft in years, not since he'd upgraded after graduation. Something has been messing with him. Shouta got out of bed and looped the capture weapon around his shoulders, the material resting comfortingly as he slowly moved through the room, inspecting everything. It was all right, but there was just a bit of wrong and off that made his hackles raise as he opened the door to his bedroom, stepping out into nothing. His room was in a void, isolated. Something was wrong. Something was off as he scrambled to hold on to the door handle and pull himself back in, taking the way that the walls were starting to crumble as Shota's feet landed back on solid ground. He estimated maybe a minute before the room would be nothing. This was clearly some sort of mindfuckery of some sort. God, he had hated that unit as a UA student. The tests on how to identify when you were stuck inside a mindscape, if it was yours or not. Shouta held out a hand and concentrated. A flower bloomed there. It was like he was dragging it slowly, much longer to form than if he were in the safety of his own head and rules. Entanglement. Great. Now, who had he been with before waking up here? The memories were blurred, green at the edge in his mind's eye. Emmy? No. She wouldn't be home for another few weeks, and he knew her mind as well as his own, thanks to far too many Quirk accidents from the daycare they had volunteered at in order to get the required hours for their teaching license. No, it couldn't be her. The room lost a wall, the one with the door, unfortunately, and the furnishings were gone too. Who else? A horrible thought hit him in the head. Shouta stared up, down, and sighed before he was jumping off what was left of the room, flipping as he fell, feet landing so he was upside down compared to the room. Odd, but predictable, considering if this was who he thought it was. Problem child. I swear to God, if this is your head. He marched off, picking a random direction. Might as well find an exit of some sort, or at least try to. Shouta didn't notice the two things peel out of the static, glowing eyes tracking his movements as he walked off. He wasn't sure how long he'd been walking before he saw the green again. It was brighter this time, 2 ovals staring at him and moving faster than he was, using the stones that were intermittently scattered around as it fluidly got closer. It was moving faster than a normal person, which wasn't ideal, and so Shouta stopped his walking to let it approach. It jumped the last stones and came to rest in front of him. Shouta took a half step backwards as he stared at, well, he wasn't quite sure what it was, but it was terrifying.
Intruder.
The impression of the word pressed into his mind, and Shouta shook his head, slowly reaching for his capture weapon.
I'm not. I promise. You are not meant to be here, Aizawa Shouta. I know, and I'll leave as soon as I can figure something out.
Shouta gripped his weapon and tugged. The thing was wavering at the edges, all static and emotion.
Leave.
Shouta activated Erasure. The thing wailed and recoiled, form expanding twice over, and black-green tendrils bursting from it to lash out as he jumped back and flipped his center of gravity, dropping until he hit the blank ground. Shouta kept his eyes on it as long as he could, before he was blinking. It was collapsing upward with an ear-piercing wail as he turned his back and ran for his life. If this was Midoriya's mind, what the hell were its other defenses if that thing was one of them? Looping his weapon around one elbow, ready to get back into battle any second, Shouta ran faster. Everything hurt. It felt like he was being torn apart at the seams as Izuku collapsed in on himself and screamed. A slightly demonic wail added on as his voice layered on itself. He'd found who the pulsing at his mind was. It was his own teacher, go figure. And when he told him that he wasn't supposed to be there, Aizawa had reacted in the most Aizawa way, by using his quirk. It shouldn't have worked here in Izuku's own goddamn mind, unless maybe his teacher was now a part of One for All, which would absolutely suck. He had enough problems trying to manage his own quirk and the respective things that came with it. He didn't need to add anything else. He lay there, quivering, form melting back into something that looked more human for a long time. Long enough that he could feel the tears slow down from their original torrent, to feel the gentle hand rubbing his back and humming soothingly. Ninth, a familiar voice murmured, "We said 2nd and 7th to take care of the mistake." Izuku pushed himself off the ground and stared into the pale eyes of First, shaking his head. "He's my teacher." "He hurt you," First said softly, "in your own safety. 7th and 2nd will keep you safer."
Aizawa-sensei needs to not die, though.
Izuku sniffed and rubbed at his face, fingers tingling from being in a smaller form while here.
I need him to be safe. He's a hero.
First stared at him for a moment longer, before he was pulling Izuku into a hug, bony fingers gently tracing circles into his back. "Okay, we will fix this, though. Intruders do not bode well here." They stood, Izuku still a bit shaky with pain, and set off. Aizawa's pulsing was easier to identify now that Izuku knew what he was looking for. It was almost like a heartbeat of sorts, though it moved much more sluggishly than a normal one, whereas Izuku's was a rabbit fast most of the time. "Are you sure you want to try to talk with him again, 9th?" First asked, and Izuku nodded determinedly. As they got ever closer, he could feel that 2nd and Nana were here too, their energy familiar and comforting as their forms appeared. His teacher sandwiched between them and looking peeved as he tried to hit them with his capture weapon.
Sensei!
Izuku yelled. Aizawa immediately looked to him, eyes widening for a brief moment, before he was landing a kick on Second's side. The vestige groaned when it connected.
Midoriya, what the hell? No, why the hell is your mind trying to kill me?
Izuku jumped away from the first and bailed directly into Nana, arms wrapping around her before she could get a punch in.
It's fine. Leave Aizawa-sensei alone.
He hurt you, Nana said vehemently, and Izuku nodded against her shoulder, even as his body ached still from what the Quirk had done to him.
He meant no harm. You know that.
Aizawa looked very confused, but Izuku wasn't about to try to explain anything. Not when he had 3 of 8 vestiges here, and not when they were about to beat up his homeroom teacher. He needed them to stop bothering Aizawa, and then Izuku could figure out a solution to the problem. Nana seemed to think it over for a moment. She paused, maneuvering Izuku into a bridal carry. God, he forgot how small he was when not in his preferred form. And checked him over carefully, cool palm pressing to his heat-flushed cheeks. You must take care of yourself, Ninth.
I know, Shimura-san,
Izuku said softly.
But the villain who probably got us like this might still have us, and I don't think I could fight them off without Aizawa-sensei.
She looked him over once more, eyes also shifting to Aizawa, who was in a complete wrestling hold, Second keeping him pinned. She sighed and carefully set Izuku down, hand ruffling his curls. We will stand down. Izuku sagged in on himself as Second let go and Aizawa scrambled to his feet.
Thank you. Yes,
Second said. He turned away from them and walked, heading to first, before the two simply mixed with the mindscape, lingering, but not truly there. Aizawa glared at Nana, and Izuku slowly moved so that he was standing next to his teacher.
Aizawa-sensei, are you okay? I'm fine. How are you, Midoriya?
Izuku shrugged.
A bit hurt, but nothing I'm not used to. I wasn't expecting your quirk to be so potent in my own mind.
Aizawa turned to him, looking more confused as his mouth twitched into a frown.
I haven't seen you since I came to.
Izuku blankly stared as the realization and then dawning horror covered Aizawa's face in a matter of moments as he pieced 2 and 3 together.
You were that eldritch abomination?
Yeah. Izuku waved a hand around in the mindscape.
It's my form here. Do you not shed your mortal skin in the comfort of your own mind? No!
To each his own. He gestured to Nana.
That's Shimura-san. She's part of my quirk.
While Aizawa was having what looked like a mini mental breakdown, Izuku moved closer to the vestige.
You can go. I'll be safe now.
Will you tell him about us? Nana asked in a whisper. Izuku glanced back at the hero and nodded.
I think I will.
She smiled at him, bright and genuine. It reminded Izuku of All Might, before she was wrapping him in a quick hug and pressing a warm kiss to his hair. Gamba kudasai, Ninth. She squeezed him one last time. Then she was letting go and fading out of sight. He turned back to Aizawa and mustered a smile of his own.
Well, how about we walk and talk?
Aizawa blinked at him.
Walk and talk about what?
Izuku lifted 2 fingers.
First, we need to find a door that leads out of my mind for you. That's the walk. During that, I'll explain the truth behind my quirk to you. That's the talk.
His teacher edged to him, eyes narrowed.
All right. Which way?
Izuku looked around, jumped and flipped. Aizawa followed as they set off in a random direction. They'd find the back of Izuku's consciousness at some point, one way or another. They walked for a minute before Izuku spoke up.
I was born quirkless.
Aizawa didn't say anything beyond a hum of acknowledgement.
I spent my whole life quirkless, you know. I wanted to be a hero from the time I was a kid. I wanted to save people, like All Might. But
All I had was this extra toe joint. He took a shuddering breath in and looked down, at the way that his feet disrupted the landscape around them, despite there being nothing, just emptiness. That changed when I was 14. Yeah, last year of middle school. There was a villain. He tried to kill me. And All Might saved me. A hand on his shoulder. Izuku looked into Aizawa's eyes. They were impossibly soft, full of concern, and he stopped walking. I followed him to a roof and asked if someone quirkless like me could be a hero. Oh, kid. Izuku let out a watery laugh. And he said, no, it actually makes sense now. I couldn't have been a hero like him when I was 14. I was all skin and bones, no quirk, and I wanted to do limelight heroics. There was no way. I know that now. And legally, I couldn't have been a hero as someone who was quirkless. Sure, he could have worded it differently, but he was right. There was a beat of silence across the mindscape. Izuku breathed in and continued. I saved Bakugo from the same villain that evening. All Might offered to train me. I'm failing to see how the quirk ties into this. I have All Might's quirk, actually. That's all? Aizawa asked bluntly. What? It makes sense. He doesn't have a quirk since Kamino. I assumed some sort of transfer of a torch happened between the two of you at some point. If I'd known you'd gotten your quirk at 14, though, I'd have gone about your training differently. Aizawa stuffed his hands into his pockets and lowered a glower on Izuku. You're still reckless, though. Oh, I know. Izuku wiped his tears and started to walk again. But Shimura-san and Second, they're previous holders of the quirk. What? Oh, so Huei's unkillable teacher is okay with a random kid getting a quirk from fucking All Might, but he draws the line when he finds out it's haunted? Izuku asked, sarcasm dripping from his mouth. A door appeared in the distance. He picked up his walking, the teacher trailing behind, as they made it to the door that was floating in nothing. He placed a hand on the handle and pulled it open, revealing a push-screen door. Izuku pushed the screen door, and Aizawa looked through it, before he was stepping over the threshold. I don't think this is an exit. It's just as blank as yours. Izuku followed him through and grimaced as he sunk up to his ankles in reflective water. At least you can choose your own up in my mind. Aizawa waded forward. I don't think that was a good thing. Yours is all staticky and has murder ghosts. Vestiges. Bless you. I didn't sneeze. Izuku kicked the water, watching it ripple outward into nothing. And that's what the holders are called. They're vestiges. Aizawa sighed and knelt down, hands dipping into the water. Izuku stood a few feet away and watched as the man kept going, clearly feeling around for something under the water. Nothing happened. It was strange how blank and dull it was here. Aizawa stood, hands and sleeves not wet, and he glanced around one last time. Let's go back. This isn't your mind. Izuku was confused, but he followed Aizawa back to the door, shutting it behind them as they got through. The second the door was closed, Aizawa was lifting a hand and summoning a sword that looked red hot, cutting the door in half. How'd you do that? Our brains are entangled. While you may be the driving host, I can still do things that I could normally do in the safety of my own mind. I assume that door either belonged to the mind of the villain that entangled us, or someone who's still alive in the quirk that you got from All Might. Everyone who got the quirk before me is dead, though. Aizawa slowly turned to him. How old were they? All Might lasted the longest. Yikes. Yeah, but don't worry. All for One shouldn't be a problem. He's in jail. Izuku turned slowly. You said we can make anything. Within reason. And you've proved yourself that you can do it, with that eldritch abomination form and all. Izuku grinned and closed his eyes, concentrating. A moment later, A door burst from his feet, throwing him in the air before he jumped back and landed next to Aizawa. The door was a deep emerald green, gold filtry at the hinges and the handle. He stepped forward, pulling it open, and a bright light shined out, bathing them both in rainbow.
The door knows I'm gay.
Aizawa snorted and moved forward.
And I could have left the second I realized I was in your head. Really? Do I need to follow you out? Typically.
Aizawa ran a hand down the green wood.
It'll make sure we both get entangled at the same time.
Izuku nodded. Aizawa gave him a comforting grin that didn't look like he was about to actually pull a logical ruse, and then followed his homeroom teacher into the light. Shouta sat bolt upright and decked Hizashi in the face before his eyes were even open. There was a yelp of Quirk's shock, and by the time he had gotten his eyes open, his friend was staring at him with a look of relief on his face, all while nursing a bloody nose.
What? Oh, thank God! Is Midoriya awake?
Hizashi yelled, and there was an affirmative reply from Snipe. Shouta turned his head. Midoriya was sitting up slowly in his bed that Recovery Girl had bequeathed him in his first semester.
Hizashi, we thought you two weren't going to wake up when we found you. Oh my God, I was so worried. We had to call Emmy and your mother. Shinso refused to leave Midoriya's side until he passed out from exhaustion a few days ago. Hizashi!
Shouta flashed his quirk, and his best friend shut his mouth with an audible click.
How long were we gone? 2 weeks. 2 weeks?
A voice, very Midoriya sounding, echoed in his mind, and Shouta almost snapped his neck to look at the student whose eyes were wide.
Did you just read my mind?
Midoriya screeched. Shouta shook his head unconvincingly, and Hizashi sighed.
We were warned it'd be a side effect. It'll wear off in a few hours. But someone kidnapped you, and it was only thanks to Nezu catching you guys getting teleported to the gates of UA that we were even able to save you from dying. Do you know who targeted us?
Shouta started to pull at the sensors on his forehead and arms. He could hear Midoriya doing the same. Hizashi worrying his lip while fiddling with his hands.
No idea. We're not letting either of you leave campus for a while, though. Midoriya's mom can come visit him here and stay in the teacher's dorms if she wants to see him now. It was her idea to do that, actually.
Oh, good, Midoriya said, flopping back onto the pillows.
I miss her. We'll go get her, kiddo.
Hizashi gave Shouta a last smile before he was waving to Snipe.
Recovery Girl will be here in a few minutes. I'll get back with Shinso, Midoriya-san, and Emmy.
The two heroes left the room, and Shouta immediately threw his covers off and stepped out of bed, bare legs wobbling.
You're telling me more about that quirk once we're cleared, and the Vestiges.
Midoriya nodded brightly.
Sure thing, Sensei, but you should get back in bed.
Yeah, the teen was right. Rest first. Figure out everything else later. And that's all for this fic. Oh, I love this fic. I've already done a Aizawa's in Midoriya's head. Ooh, Vestiges, but that one was crack. This one is kind of spooky, and I wanted to lean into that spooky because spooky, and also because this is recorded for Voice Team 2024 for another brain art challenge. Well, actually, this might be the first one of those that's coming out, but I did a lot of those. And it's where I changed, you misread the challenge with a word or a phrase. And this is from, what was it? The one I don't know how to pronounce that's for helping you fall asleep, Sorific or something, Sorific, whatever. Instead of this is supposed to make you fall asleep, it's this is supposed to make you creeped out, it's supposed to make you feel spooked. So I tried to extra lean into the spook for the spoopy bit, because this is just the eldritch horror, and it's just that one bit is holy shit, Midoriya is terrifying. But no, I love this. It's really good. Just, I I maybe don't understand everything that's happening. The first time I read this, apparently I didn't even realize that Eraserhead was married to Miss Joke in this one. Or at least in a relationship. I don't know if it said married, but I did not realize that. I don't know, that's when I read things first time, I miss like half the details, which is, you know, why if I like something, it's great to podfic it, so I get to read it again, so I actually get to know some details. But, oh, yeah, this was fun. Who doesn't shed their mortal form while in the comfort of their own mind? It's like, one of the reasons why shapeshifting is like one of the best superpowers you could get is, you know, you can turn into a shambling mound of abstract shapes and sulk outside your strange father's house in the night while chanting ominously about his sins. It's great, yeah. Anyway, that's all for now. I hope you guys liked it. As always, link to the fic is in the description below. Leave a kudos and comments to the original author if you can. But I will see you guys next time. Bye!
Hehe, Tumblr.